So good evening. My report is all about ways on telling countries' location. So first, I will tell to you what is location. Location, where a specific place on earth can be found. A location is a place where a particular point or object exists. It is important in terms of geography and is usually considered precise than a place. It is being described using latitude and longitude and have sets of coordinates. Locations are of two types, the absolute location and relative location. So first, what is absolute location? Can be designated using a specific pairing of latitude and longitude in a Cartesian coordinate grids. So it is described the location of a place based on a fixed point on Earth. For example, the Empire State Building is located at 4.7 degrees north, 74 degrees west, and it sits at the intersection of 33rd Street and 5th Avenue in New York City, New York. That is the building's absolute location. In this map, it is a crop map using the location of the U.S. Capitol. This is the Empire State Building, which is located at 40.7 degrees north and 74 degrees west. It sits the intersection of 33rd Street and 5th Avenue in New York City, New York. Latitude or the equator. It is the imaginary lines on a map or globe that runs from east to west. So latitude is used to mark the north and south position of a location on the Earth's surface and ranges from 0 degrees at the equator to 90 degrees at the north and south poles. There are 180 degrees of latitude, and distance between each degree latitude is roughly in 69 miles or 111 kilometers. Longitude or prime meridian. It is the imaginary lines on map or globe that run from north to south. It is indicate the location of a point east to west. There are 360 degrees of longitude and composed of degrees, minutes, and seconds or DMS. What is relative location? It is described a displacement from another site. For example, 3 miles northwest to Seattle. Another one is Empire State Building is 365 kilometers north of the White House in Washington, D.C. It is also about 15 blocks from New York Central Park. This is relative location. So this is the map which I give example to you. Relative location refers to a place or entity based on its location with respect to other locations. So, relative location is not fixed reference. It is changed and based on the secondary location. Another ways to know the country's location is direction. It is used to determine where things are in relation to other things. So, directions like north, east, west, and south can help describe where one place is in relation to another. There are two types of direction. The relative direction, it is known as egocentric coordinates. So as you can see in the pictures, it is the example of human egocentric coordinates. Relative direction will use in common terms such as left, right, forward, backward, up, and down. It can be useful to people who are unfamiliar with the location of cardinal direction like east, west, north, and south. Another is compass direction. It is involved the use of cardinal and ordinal direction, which describe the location of one point to another. Compass direction involves cardinal direction like north, south, west, east. For example, the person may explain that to get to the local park, you have to go to south down Street A, turn east at the pan, and that the park is located on the northwest side of the pan. Relative to north, the direction is southwest are in 90 degrees intervals in the clockwise direction. So, my second topic is about the climate. So, what is climate? It is weather patterns typical for an area over a long period of time. It is a range of temperatures for a region and determines the type of plants and animals that can live there. So, climate is different from weather. Climate is the average weather in given area over a longer period of time. Climate includes formation. Example given are average temperature in different seasons, rainfall, and sunshine. So, there are factors that affect climates, or the acronym LACE MAPS. L stands for latitude, A for air masses, C for continentality, E for elevation, M for mountain barriers, O for ocean currents, P for pressure and prevailing winds, and S for storm. So, let me first introduce the first factor is latitude. The farther from the equator, the colder and drier it becomes. It means that latitude or the distance of the equator or from the equator. The temperature drops the farther in area from the equator due to the curvature of the earth. It means that if you are closer to the pole, the sunlight has a larger area of atmosphere to pass through the sun, and it is in the lower angle in the sky. The second one is air masses. Cold air comes from the polar regions, while hot air comes from the tropics or tropics. Air masses, it means that when a warm air mass travels over colder ground, the bottom layer of air cools and because of its high density. It is trapped near the ground. In general, the cold air masses tend to flow toward the equator and the warm air masses tend to flow toward the poles. The third one is continentality, the effect of location on a continent on the climate of a place. Continentality is the distance from the sea. The sea affects the climate of a place where the coastal areas are cooler and wetter than the inland areas. In summer, the coastal temperatures can be very hot and also dry because the sea evaporates before it reaches the center of the land masses. So, malaki ang epekto ng continentality sa climate ng isang lugar. Other one is the elevation. The higher you go, the colder it gets. So, elevation is the altitude or height above sea level. It is the location at the higher altitude which have cold temperatures. Sinasabi na if the temperature decreases by 1 degree Celsius for every 100 meter in altitude, ibig sabihin that coastal locations have cooler in summer and warmer in winter. So, magkakaiba yung climate ng bawat elevation ng isang lugar na kinaroroonan mo. Mountain barriers, also known as orographic effect or the rain shadow effect. So what does it mean? It means that the topography of an area can greatly influence in our climate. Mountain ranges are natural barriers to air movement. In the western slope of the Sierra Nevada, sinking air warms from compressions which the clouds evaporates and dry in condition. Ocean currents, continuous, predictable, directional movement of seawater driven by gravity, wind. So, the ocean currents act as conveyor belts of warm and cold water, which sends the heat toward the polar regions and helping tropical areas cool off, which influences both weather and climate. The words ocean affect the climate by playing an important role in keeping our planet warm. The prevailing winds or pressure, largely predictable and named for broad areas of Earth over which they form. So, the direction of prevailing winds determines which type of air masses usually moves over an area. For example, a west wind might bring warm moist from over an ocean. So, an east wind might bring cold dry air from over a mountain range. Storm, it is a generic term popularly used to describe a large variety of atmospheric disturbances. So, storm can evaporate or the evaporation intensifies as temperature rise and the transfer of heat from the oceans to the air. The storm travel across the warm oceans, heavier rainfall and more flooding when the storm hit land. So there are also elements of climate. These are the precipitation. So the precipitation refer to the all form of water, liquid or solid that fall from the atmosphere and reach the ground. The second one is the temperature. The temperature is the measure of hotness or coldness expresses in any scales including Fahrenheit and Celsius. The humidity, it is the amount of water vapor in the air. If there is a lot of water vapor in the air, the humidity will be high. The fourth one is sunshine. The sunshine is the source of most of the energy that drives the biological and physical process in the world around us. The wind velocity, it carries moisture into an atmosphere, as well as the hot or cold air into a climate which affects weather patterns. The fog. Fog is formed when the difference between air temperature and dew point is less than in 2.5 degrees Celsius or 4.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Frost. Frost is a thin layer of ice on a solid surface which form from the water vapor in an above freezing atmosphere coming in contact with a solid surface. The temperature is below freezing point. The hailstorm. Hailstorm is the atmospheric conditions as a melting level gets higher, the hail that form high in the atmosphere and falls toward the ground may be melted at a time. There are types of climates. There are hot climate, which is under the equatorial, tropical, and desert. In equatorial, the tropical rainforest climate usually found within 10 to degrees Celsius altitude of equator. The tropical, it is on monthly average temperatures of 18 degrees Fahrenheit and features hot temperature. The desert, it is an arid climate in which there is an excess of evaporation over precipitation. Another is the temperate climate. It is under the Mediterranean, oceanic, and continental. In Mediterranean, the dry summer climate and mild wet winters. Oceanic, it is known as maritime climate or marine climate. The third one is continental. It exists when cold air masses during winter and warm air masses form in summer. The third type is cold climate. It is polar and high mountain. In polar, it is characterized by a lack of warm summer. In every month, in other place, the polar climate has an average less than in 10 degrees Celsius. It is in glaciers and located in the countries in Arctic region. High mountain are also called highland climate. It is a high elevation which decreases the pressure and reduces oxygen availability. Example of high mountain is the Mount Everest. The third one is landform. So what is landform? It is a natural or artificial features of solid surface of the earth and other planetary body. So landform have different types. What are the types of landforms? The first one is mountain. Natural elevation of the earth's surface and has a large mass. Mountain usually have a step, sloping sides, and sharp and rounded ranges and high point called peak or summit. Most geologists classify mountain as the landform that rises 1,000 feet or 300 meters above its surrounding area. Hills is smaller than a mountain and top is rounded. Hills are landforms that rise above the surrounding terrain and confine the summits but are generally understood to be the smaller than mountains. Example of hills are the Chocolate Hills in Bohol. Plateau, an area of relatively level high ground. Plateau is a flat, elevated landform that rises sharply above the surrounding area on at least one side. Plateaus occurs in every continent and take up a third of the Earth's land. The Yellowstone in France and Ethiopian plateau in Africa are prominent examples of plateau. Plains, large area of flat land with few trees. Plain is a broad area of relative flat land, and it is one of the major landforms and types of land on Earth. So, example of plains are there in Nueva Ecija, which we plant some rice or other vegetables. Desert. Desert is a dry or arid, which receives less than 10% of rain per year. The desert have a lot of wind because they are flat and have no vegetation to block out the wind. So it is a place that gets little to no rain. So the desert in United Arab Emirates, which have cactus and camel, are living there. Forest has numerous trees, plants, animals, and bugs. So forest or jungle are a lot of different types around the world, such as rainforest, boreal, coniferous, and deciduous. So in forest or jungle, you can see there lots of trees and some exotic or extinct animals living there. So forests have different, there are different types which help the ecosystem equal. Valley. Valley is located between mountains and hills. It has an elongated, long area often running between hills or mountain. It contains a river stream running from one end to another. Canyon, a landform created when river causes erosion over a long period of time. So canyon is a landform which caused by erosion and can stretch for hundreds of miles. Example of canyon is the Grand Canyon. Island, island that is completely surrounded by water. Island is a completely or any type of land which surrounded by different types of water such as sea, ocean, river, and lake. So, island have a landform which is located in different places in the world, like Hawaii Islands. There in the Philippines have islands in Pangasinan located in Alaminos. It is called 100 Islands. Cape. Cape is elevated portion of large size of land that extends from distance into water bodies. So cape is generally a coastal feature which there is a distinct change in the trend of coastline in a shape or in composition. Major capes sometimes serve as point dividing oceans. An example of cape is Good Hope, which is the most famous historic cape located in South Africa. Cave. Hollow space below the ground or inside the mountain. Caves are formed by the dissolution of limestone. It dissolves out the limestone along the joints, bedding planes, and fractures, which become enlarged enough to form caves. So there are many caves in our country. The famous ones or tourist attraction is in Puerto Princesa. Volcano is a landform created during an event where lava comes out from the Earth's crust. So volcano is a landform which have a scale and volcanic geomorphologic features, which includes the lava flows and related features like the hars. So example is such volcano are in Mount Mayon and Mount Pinatubo. The last one is peninsula. It is a landform surrounded by water on most of its border while building connected to a mainland. So peninsula is an area of land surrounded by water on three sides. Some peninsulas are formed when mud and sand are deposited between a series of islets or small islands, which makes a solid landmass. The Arabian Peninsula is the world's largest peninsula. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned some of my 3 reports, which are the ways on telling country's location, the climate, and the landform. Thank you. God bless.